In a world cloaked in darkness, where the dead rest and nightmares awaken, if you dare to listen, you're about to step into the shadows of midnight screams. Not everyone who enters makes it out alive.
In a small, isolated village nestled deep within a dense forest, life was simple, peaceful, and slow. That was until one fateful autumn evening when the church bell tolled 13 times. No one rang the bell. The villagers, confused and frightened, gathered at the church to investigate. The old caretaker, Father James, assured them it was likely the wind. But whispers spread about an ancient curse, a tale the elders told in hushed tones by firelight. When the bell tolls 13 times, the forgotten will rise. The next night, the graveyard grew restless. At first, there were small signs, dirt disturbed on unmarked graves, faint whispers carried by the wind, and shadows moving where none should. But by the third night, they came. They were not the people they had once been. The risen dead, with hollow eyes and bodies riddled with decay, shambled into the village. They did not speak, but carried an air of cold, suffocating malice. Elena, a young woman who had lost her mother years ago, recognized one of them. Her mother's hollow face stared at her, lips moving soundlessly. Against her better judgment, Elena followed her to the graveyard, desperate for answers. The graveyard was alive with movement. Figures, some mere skeletons, and others freshly buried, gathered around a large blackened tree at its center. Its gnarled branches seemed to stretch toward the moon, and at its base, a strange figure stood. It was not human. The creature's form shifted like smoke, its face hidden beneath a hood. It spoke in a voice that was both a whisper and a roar, addressing the dead. You were abandoned, forgotten. Now, you will remind them. Elena hid, her heart pounding. She realized the dead sought revenge, not for their deaths, but for being left behind, unremembered by the living. The risen began marching toward the village, their steps growing faster, more deliberate. Elena ran ahead, warning the villagers, but panic erupted. Torches were lit, doors were barred, but the dead were unstoppable. They tore through the village, destroying homes and dragging people into the darkness. In the chaos, Elena remembered something her grandmother had once told her. The forgotten crave remembrance. A name spoken aloud can calm the restless. Gathering her courage, she returned to the graveyard. As the creature loomed over her, she began to speak the names of the dead, loudly, clearly, one by one. The dead paused. Their hollow eyes turned toward her, and for a moment, the rage in them softened. The creature shrieked, its form writhing as it tried to silence her, but Elena persisted. With each name, the dead fell to their knees, their forms crumbling into dust. Finally, with the last name spoken, the creature let out a deafening scream before vanishing into the blackened tree. When the sun rose, the village was in ruins, but the dead were gone. Elena stood alone in the graveyard, whispering a silent promise. You will not be forgotten. She thought it was over. But the blackened tree at the center of the graveyard began to tremble. Its twisted branches cracked and groaned, and the ground beneath it quaked violently. Before her, the trunk split open like a gaping wound, revealing a swirling void of darkness within. A chilling voice, deeper and more menacing than before, emanated from the tree. You cannot stop the forgotten, for they are countless. You have only delayed their wrath. A single skeletal hand emerged from the void, followed by an arm wrapped in chains that rattled with an unnatural rhythm. Elena stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. The void was a gateway, not just for the dead of the village, but for the unremembered souls of countless ages. Desperate, she looked around for anything that could seal the portal. Her eyes fell on a small silver locket around her neck, a keepsake from her mother. She opened it, revealing a faded picture of her family. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Remembrance is the strongest force against oblivion. Gathering every ounce of courage, Elena approached the blackened tree. Holding the locket high, she whispered not just the names of the villagers, but her own memories of them, how they had lived, laughed, and loved. Her voice grew stronger with each word, her memories pouring out like a beacon of light. The void writhed and recoiled against her words. The skeletal hand froze mid-climb, and the chains began to shatter one by one. With a final defiant cry, Elena cast the locket into the heart of the void. The blackened tree erupted in a blinding flash of light, and the swirling darkness was consumed. The ground trembled one last time before falling silent. When the dust settled, the tree was gone, leaving only a patch of charred earth. The graveyard was eerily quiet, the air heavy with finality. But as Elena turned to leave, she noticed something strange. The graves that had been disturbed were now whole again, their markers restored and etched with names that had long been forgotten. A sense of peace filled the air, as if the dead had finally found rest. Elena left the graveyard, her steps heavy, but her heart resolute. Though the village would need time to heal, she knew one thing for certain. The forgotten had been remembered, and their wrath would not return, at least not for a long time. Story 2. Imagine a peaceful town, full of life and harmony, suddenly disappearing from the face of the earth. Every single resident gone without a trace. What if I told you this isn't just the plot of a sci-fi movie, but a real story shrouded in mystery and fear? Welcome to the chilling tale of Ashley, Kansas, a town that succumbed to an unimaginable fate. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning reality itself. On August 8, 1952, Ashley, a small farming town in Kansas with a population of just under 700, was as serene as ever. Known for its quiet atmosphere and lack of crime, Ashley didn't even have its own police station. The nearby town of Hayes managed all emergencies for Ashley, though there wasn't much to handle until that day. It all started with a frantic phone call to the Hayes police station. A man named Gabriel Jonathan reported a terrifying phenomenon. A black spot had appeared in the sky above Ashley. Initially dismissed as a drunken ramble, his claim was soon supported by a flood of calls from Ashley residents. They described the same eerie black spot growing in size and darkness, and with it, strange events began to unfold. Reports poured in of bizarre fires erupting and disappearing, shadowy figures lurking around, and people growing more and more frightened. On August 9th, Officer Alan Moss was dispatched to investigate, but every attempt to reach Ashley was futile. The roads seemed to loop back to Hayes, as if the town had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, the calls from Ashley grew more alarming. By August 10th, residents reported that the sky over the town remained pitch black even during the day. On August 11th, the situation escalated when children in Ashley began behaving strangely. Over 300 calls described children talking to deceased loved ones, claiming they were outside and calling them to come out. By midnight on August 12th, every child in Ashley had disappeared without explanation. The disappearance of the children marked a chilling escalation in the Ashley phenomenon. Not a single child remained in the town. Parents described the events leading up to their vanishings with haunting consistency. Many reported hearing whispers in the night, faint voices of their children calling out to unseen entities before suddenly going silent. Some claimed to have caught fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures standing outside their windows, disappearing into the blackness when approached. On August 13th, the air over Ashley thickened with an oppressive silence. For hours, no calls came into the Hayes Police Department. Then, at 5:19 p.m., the stillness was shattered. A flood of calls described a massive, unstoppable fire that appeared at the southern edge of the town. Witnesses reported that the flames were not ordinary. They burned with an unnatural intensity, radiating heat, yet leaving no smoke. The fire seemed alive, moving deliberately, and consuming homes and fields with eerie precision. Residents who had remained barricaded inside their homes began to see figures emerging from the blaze. These were not ordinary people. The figures glowed with an unnatural light, their features eerily familiar. Callers described the figures as resembling deceased family members, friends, and even the recently vanished children. "They're back," one woman sobbed into the phone. "But they're not the same. They want us to join them." Those who opened their doors to these figures reported overwhelming sensations of warmth and comfort, only to scream in terror moments later as the figures dragged them into the fire. One man, Benjamin Sherman, made a frantic call describing how the fire had reached his home, its light piercing through every crack and crevice. His last words, before the line went dead, were, "They're here. I can see her. My wife. She's telling me it's time." The final call came on August 14th. A woman named April Foster described seeing her son, who had died years earlier, standing outside her window. He begged her to join him in the fire. Moments later, the line went dead. The earthquake on August 17th, registering a staggering 7.9 on the Richter scale, marked the final, devastating chapter of the Ashley mystery. The tremor shook surrounding towns for miles, collapsing buildings and sending panicked residents pouring into the streets. However, the epicenter of the quake, located precisely where Ashley once stood, was an enigma that defied all understanding. When rescue and geological teams arrived, they were met with an unsettling sight: a colossal chasm in the earth, stretching over a mile deep and half a mile wide. The edges of the crater were unnaturally smooth, as though the earth had been carved with precision rather than fractured by seismic activity. There was no rubble, no remnants of the town's buildings, and no signs of the people who had lived there, just an eerie void. Strange findings. As researchers descended into the chasm, they encountered bizarre phenomena. At around 800 feet, instruments began to fail. Compasses spun erratically, radios crackled with unintelligible voices, and temperature gauges fluctuated wildly. A few team members claimed to hear faint whispers, though no source could be identified. One geologist reported seeing flickering lights deep within the abyss, resembling the glow described by Ashley's residents during the fire. Core samples taken from the edges of the chasm revealed layers of rock fused together in ways that defied natural processes. It was as though an immense force had compressed the earth with unimaginable heat and pressure, but without any evidence of a volcanic eruption or impact event. Some speculated that this was a result of a localized gravitational anomaly, though the lack of any scientific precedent left the theory unproven. Within days of the discovery, the site was cordoned off by federal authorities. Satellite imagery of the area was censored, and access to the crater was restricted under the guise of national security. Residents of neighboring towns reported seeing military vehicles and helicopters in the area, as well as hearing strange, low-frequency hums emanating from the chasm at night. A classified memo leaked years later suggested that the government had detected unusual electromagnetic activity at the site. The document described persistent anomalies and referenced the disappearance of equipment sent into the chasm. These hints at deeper investigations fueled conspiracy theories, with some claiming that Ashley had been a test site for a secret experiment involving energy manipulation or dimensional gateways. To this day, the Ashley crater remains an unsolved mystery. The site is heavily monitored, and occasional tremors are reported, as though the Earth itself is still unsettled by what occurred. Whether the chasm represents a natural catastrophe a supernatural event, or the remnants of a human experiment gone awry, its secrets remain buried deep, along with the memory of a town that vanished without a trace.